Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We're very excited about tonight. Okay, we'll give a second for everybody to join. Okay, if you're joining tonight, we have quite a gift planned for you. We'll be joined by Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, and we'll be doing some Q&A. There is I believe, a question box down below, or a question mark at least. You can submit questions as we go along, and some of them will definitely get answered. And if not for this week, maybe next week. We hope this will be a weekly series every Thursday night. So if you're new here, make sure to follow Meaningful Minute. You can follow Rabbi Efrem Goldberg as well. Tonight's live stream is sponsored by Zecher Nishmas Rav Mordechai Tzvi Ben Yosef Chaim. All the learning, inspiration should be in Elias for the Neshama. And here we go. We are adding Rabbi Goldberg. Feel free to add your question below as the live is going on. There are many people who have sent in questions the whole time. Rabbi Goldberg, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Nachi. Great to see you. Good to
Likewise. It's good to be back together. I'm very excited about this new series that we're launching over here.
Me too.
Should be with a lot of Muslim. We should answer a lot of people's questions, Mirza Shem.
Man, it's better to be with you on Erev Shabbos than it was on Tisha B'Av last time we did together. So
absolutely, Mirza Shem. Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right in. And again, I want to mention for everyone who's just joining now, feel free to either put your questions in the comments, or if not, I believe there's a question mark box down there. You can submit your question over there, and we'll hopefully get to it. Perfect. Someone just did that. If you see that question box, you could just go ahead and put a question there. To start off, we're going to start off with a hard question that was sent in.
Okay.
I am an older single, and it's hard to remain positive. My friends most of them are married with kids. How do I not let the fact that I am single consume me?
It's a great question. And let me give the disclaimer before we even start. I don't have all the answers for myself. I have rebbeim, I have teachers, I have people around me. Nor do I think that am I presumptuous to think I could provide all the answers to you for tonight. So with that disclaimer, it's just my thoughts based on my own experiences and thinking out loud. I hope people will share their reactions and comments and thoughts in the comments as well. It's a difficult question. I mean, people go on in life and they see the people around them, their peers, their age group, and they want to be living that life. They want that stage of life. And it's very hard. It can be very, very difficult. It takes almost superhuman ability to fargin, to feel happy and joyous for others. The Chazal, our rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avos, among the 48 ways the Torah is acquired, is no sei ba'olam chaveru. We have to have the capacity to lift the ol of our friend. And the simple understanding is, you see someone in pain or suffering, cook them a meal, make a phone call, lift their spirits, unburden them. However, there's another interpretation. The author of Kelm says, it means to forgive. You can be with someone else, not only in sadness, you can be with someone else in happiness. So one of the ways is to channel and realize that your friend's happiness is an extension of your own. If you care about your friend and you see a piece of yourself in them, then take joy in their simcha, in their accomplishment, in their achievement, number one. Number two, and I think much more importantly, is we live in a world, unfortunately, that tries to define people by their marital status. Are you single? Are you married? But being married, while it's a major part of life, certainly it defines lifestyle, is not the only part of a person's identity. There are people who are married. You know, I was talking to a shadchan who pointed this out to me, that there's unfortunately a negative trend. Sometimes parents will have one child who's not married, be a little bit older, who's accomplished in 100 other ways, education, professionally, and yet they're not married yet. No, have another child who's married but is unaccomplished, hasn't really achieved anything professionally, educationally, leadership and community-wise. And sadly, some parents will act as if the fact that one child is married is the greatest accomplishment. And this is my married child, Nebuch, my other one, who's a Nobel Prize winning, discovered the cure, made peace in the world, but they're not married, so therefore they are less adequate. And that's a mistake. Being single or married is not the sole definition of a person's identity of who we are. It is certainly, it has an impact on who we are, but it's not the only definition. So my advice is to try to forge a life and to make a difference in people's lives. Be a community leader, volunteer, take on a project, realize the mission that we're meant to do, what difference we're meant to make by being here. And while taking the initiative of going and trying to find that person and get married, don't let that be the sum total of defining who a person is.
Right. So to sort of wrap it up, your relationship status should not define your entire life. There's a lot more to it than whether you're married or single.
Exactly. You're an Eved Hashem. What's your relationship with God like? What kind of Daven are you? What kind of learner are you? What kind of chesed do you volunteer to do? There's your social status. What kind of friend are you? There's community status. What kind of community leader or volunteer are you?
But
If
so much,
you
so
are,
much of our, so much of our lives, and I guess in the from Jewish world, is surrounded around marriage and kids and stuff like that. So you understand, like it's difficult. It's definitely
absolutely. I don't mean to suggest that it's easier to minimize the pain or the tension or the challenge of it for the person who is single, sometimes for their family members who are longing for them to be married. You're right. Jewish life is designed around the family. The Shabbos table,
right,
the table, it's people make friends with where their kids are in school and so on and so forth. So there is no question that is a big part of defining life and lifestyle, but it doesn't have to be the only one. I'm not suggesting give up hope, don't get married, move on, and create an identity independent of being married, be single. No, take initiative, make an effort, daven, don't take excessive initiative. This is an area the Vilna Gaon, the Gra writes, that it says that Hashem is the one who makes shidduchim, so a person has to put their faith and submit and surrender to Him while we take initiative and we network and we make an effort, but it doesn't have to be. Other people may try to limit you to define you by your marital status, but you don't have to define yourself. And what
right,
you project to others doesn't have to be defined by that alone.
right. Okay, that sounds great. And I love that a lot of people are chiming in the comments. It's awesome. Continue to do so. And I see people are sending in questions over here. So let me just check them out. Okay, we have a question sent in. Let me see if I can. Okay. How, as a busy mom and business owner during this time, can we prepare for the Kedusha of Rosh Hashanah?
Also, a great question. I happen to not be a busy mom, so I probably have no credibility to answer. I'm married to a pretty busy mom. She's not a business owner, but she's pretty busy with the community. I'll tell you, my simple answer is that don't put the pressure on yourself as if you were at a different stage of life and had all of the free time and ability to be invested in the preparation for Rosh Hashanah you did when you were in seminary or when you did at a different stage of your life before you had children, before you had other responsibility. There have been some great Gedolei Yisrael who've written letters to moms who say that if you can't make it to Shul Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, or you can't make it to the length of Shul that you want to be there, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, don't beat yourself up and don't feel guilty. Being home with your children is your job. That is your role. That is your responsibility. If a Hatzalah member runs out of davening to go save a life, do we say, Nebuch, you missed Musaf, Nebuch, you missed parts of davening, you don't take it seriously? We say, that's your job in that moment. That's what we count on you for. So those children, they need life-saving supervision. They need that inspiration and influence, and that is the responsibility. So that's my simple answer. I mean, I do think that there's an incredible program called Meaningful Minute, Meaningful People, the whole Meaningful series. You could be a busy mom and a biz owner, but you have to make it to work, from work. You could be watching, you could be listening. You can, I mean, the beauty of Meaningful Minute, what Nachi, what you created, is you taught people that in 1 minute you can scroll mindlessly, you can waste your time on Narishkeit, or in 1 minute something can touch you in a way that changes your whole day, that changes your whole week, that changes your whole life. Maybe you hear a speaker in that meaningful minute, put to the great music and the great background and the great way that you stream it, you could hear something that changes you. So it's not all about sitting and going through Michtav Eliyahu or going through some sefer in preparation for Rosh Hashanah, studying the Machzor and so on and so forth. Technology has afforded us opportunity to steal time. I hate that expression. Steal time when commuting, when cooking, when doing different things. We can steal a minute there and be inspired. But I think much more fundamentally, don't put pressure on yourself beyond where you're meant to be at that stage of your life. If you have young children at home, you're a mom, that's your job. That's your job right now. Do the best you can to also prepare for Rosh Hashanah, but don't feel guilty and don't beat yourself up.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to, part of this series that we're doing, something I'm going to try to do is just get as many questions out as possible and keep getting answers. A lot of times, a lot of question and answer segments in the firm world become question and answer because the focus is on one on
Really, my
one.
way of telling me, shorten the answers.
No,
Let's
you're doing great. You're
make
doing great so far. I'm just putting
Nach,
it out
you're,
there.
you're a tzaddik. I'm ready to go.
Okay, we have another question sent in. Do you have any practical tips or advice to calm nerves and anxiety? My nerves and anxiety have gotten a lot worse over COVID.
Absolutely. Number one, if your nerves and anxiety have escalated, if they're elevated and you need help, do not be shy, do not hesitate, get the help. If your tooth hurt, if your elbow hurt, if you had a physical pain, you absolutely go to a doctor. And if you have anxiety, tension to the point that you think that there's a diagnosis, that you need some support, you need some therapy, you need some medicine, seek it. There's no shame, there's no embarrassment whatsoever. I don't know if you've been alive the last 2 years and you don't have any anxiety. I think there's something mentally unhealthy about you.
Check your pulse.
Check your pulse, right? If you're alive and now the Delta variant's back and the pressure and the politics and the policies and the yum and the rhyme, everyone is heightened. So number one is, are you like clinical diagnosis level? Get help. If it's general Jewish neurosis, anxiety, here's a few quick ideas. Number one, living with emunah. Living with emunah. It's not a panacea. I'm not suggesting that if you put more faith, if you submit and surrender to Hashem, if you feel God in your life, then you'll never worry. You'll never be anxious. It's not a panacea. You have to remind ourselves all the time. But when you make that effort to live with emunah, study, watch, read, subscribe, listen. There are countless resources to encourage and promote us living with emunah today. And the more that you can stop yourself and realize, here's Hashem. Yesterday I flew back with my family, a beautiful simcha, and the flight was delayed a couple hours, and this thing didn't work, and that thing was going to be delayed. Last night we have our podcast. We had a technology breakdown. It couldn't stream live. The platform collapsed. I was sitting on the plane with no Wi-Fi, no ability to address. And you know what? I just remembered. I teach us living with emunah. Just take a deep breath, let go, and let God. Everything's for a reason. Everything is for a reason. And when you put your faith and you submit and surrender to Him and you recognize there are no coincidences, it's all choreographed from above, then you can handle anything that comes your way. Take that deep breath and restore your soul, and you are good to go. So number one is living with emunah. And number two, very briefly, is those thoughts come knocking. You're lying in bed at night, you're in the shower, you're in a commute, you're walking somewhere, and those anxious thoughts, they come knocking. What if? And what will be? And what if it doesn't? And you start to panic. But we have the ability to decide what thoughts we will let in and which thoughts we keep out. Just because the thought comes knocking doesn't mean we have to let it in. We can keep that door closed, we can keep it locked. We just have to have the mindfulness to realize, thought, you can knock. I'm not letting you take up valuable real estate in my head.
That's like, I feel like that skill set to be able to keep that door locked is sort of like any other muscle that we have. You need to work that muscle. And, I don't think anyone should get discouraged if you're not able to keep that door locked and every thought that comes to your mind walks right in. It just means like you haven't worked that muscle. Like try using your toe muscle. Maybe it's very, very weak. You never worked it out. Like you have to, how do you work that muscle, Rabbi Goldberg? How does someone train? What are ways to like work on that discipline?
It's like any other muscle. If you don't work it and you don't use it, it's going to atrophy and die. But the more you flex it, the more you use it, flex in the positive sense, not like the millennial kid sense. But the more you use it, then the healthier, the stronger it becomes, the more it's going to hold you up. So it takes mindfulness. It takes consciousness, right? So something's happening and you start to panic. You're going to miss the flight. The thing is delayed. The thing's not going to work out. The technology didn't, it collapsed. It imploded. And you start to panic and your blood pressure goes up and your pulse increases and your sweat glands are pumping and you start to think the world's coming to an end. So it takes the mindfulness to reset and to come back and to remember, no, whatever's happening right now is what's meant to happen. Nothing is random. Nothing is chance. It's all by design. And therefore, I just need to decide that even those thoughts are coming, I can keep that door closed. I don't have to let them in. Trying to fall asleep at night, replace them. One of the ways to keep the door locked is to replace who's knocking on it. So you won't hear the knocking if you're sitting with a guest who you welcomed in, who you're so excited is there. Have some go-to thoughts that you go to that calm you. Have a happy place. I don't know. I think a lot of people have while they're falling asleep, while they're whatever. They're those happy place that you go, the thoughts that calm you and relax you. So when you're sitting with the guest who you welcome, you're able to better ignore the guest who's trying to knock, who you desperately don't want to allow in.
Beautiful. Okay, we have another question here, and I'm going to put it up on the screen. If you have trouble davening and having a relationship with Hashem, how do you daven to Him?
Yeah, that's an age-old question. That's like a 5-hour beginning of a conversation, not these 2-minute allocation to me for these answers. But I would say that davening is hard. It's a foreign language to most of us. Hebrew's not, even if we understand the Hebrew, it's not our first language, not a natural language. And the language of David HaMelech is sometimes complicated poetry. It's hard. It's not our natural language. But I think a lot of the struggles, look, in davening, you can work hard to study the Siddur, to learn the Siddur like a sefer. Most people don't. We have all kinds of magnificent books that come out, and we read those books, we learn those books, but we forget that the Siddur is also a sefer. Siddur is also a book that you could learn, you could spend time on, you can try to translate and understand and dissect and see different opinions about. But all of that, you take a sentence from the Siddur and offer 6 different interpretations of what it means, but you don't have a relationship with God, you're not going to get anywhere. It's all about a relationship with God. If you do have a relationship with God, then the Siddur is just going to be the platform for you to be able to communicate that relationship. Hanging in my house, my wife's grandmother, her Babi, Allah Shalom, a Holocaust survivor, an amazing woman who lost her husband, a child before the war, remarried, had 1 child, my father-in-law. She was a very, very special woman. So hanging in my house in a box frame is her Tehillim. Her Tehillim, the pages are soaked with her tears. Her Tehillim, the pages are worn out, the words are almost worn out. Her Tehillim, the cover's falling off. I'm pretty confident, I don't say this to insult her, I'm pretty confident she couldn't translate most of the paragraphs of Tehillim. If you asked her what these words meant, I'm pretty sure she'd have no idea. But you know what she did know? That when she was saying them, she was talking to the shepherd. She was talking to the creator. She was talking to someone who's very real, her best friend in the world that she could confide in and talk to with no judgment, who she could trust and was reliable, who she could express gratitude, she could object to and protest to when it didn't work out. So I think a lot of the challenge we have with davening is because we're an ADHD generation. Davening is not, multimedia. It's just a siddur, the same words. And we should invest time in understanding them. But I think as much we need to invest time in developing a relationship with God, and then we'll find the conversation will flow much better.
Right. I hear that. So it's important to connect. You have to connect first, I hear.
You got to connect. You got to be in a real relationship. I'll tell you this. If you never talk to God when you're not in shul, you're going to struggle to talk to God when you are in shul. If you never talk to God outside the siddur, you're going to struggle to talk to God inside the siddur. The most authentic davening is the one we do in our heart. You're in the car, God, make the lights stay green, help me find the parking spot. You're at the supermarket, you're putting the potato kugel in the oven, you're putting together the drasha for Shabbos, you're walking into the courtroom, the operating room, the boardroom to make a deal. Whatever you're doing in life, when you talk to God, the Gemara says, "Halavai she'ispala kol hayom." Wouldn't it be amazing if people daven the entire day? So I forgot which Rebbe it is who interprets. It doesn't mean wouldn't it be great if you could sit in shul and daven all day. It means wouldn't it be great if before every activity you did, before you go into the gym, the supermarket, work, and shul, you offer a little tefillah. Make the potato go work out. Let the shopping trip go well. Let the technology for the Instagram live tonight go smoothly. And just incorporate talking to Hashem in everything we do. Every time you got in a car, not tefillah saderach, but every time you got in a car, you said, Hashem, let us get there safely. Let us get there smoothly. Let us get there quickly. So it's talking to God all the time outside the siddur, I think, will help you talk to God inside the siddur. Talking to God outside of shul will help you talk to God inside of shul.
Okay. Sarah K., who asked that question. If you have any follow-up, feel free to write it over here. But like you're moving on, we have a very important question, one I think that many people can relate to. Rosh Hashana happens every single year. I find myself davening for forgiveness for the same things every single year, and I am kind of jaded. The question sort of ends there.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, it's a big problem. That's the Vorten from, Hashana. Reshus Hashana ad Achar Hashana. What is the beginning of Hashana, the year, Achar Hashana to the year? So the answer is, the answer many give is, Reshus Hashana, at the beginning of every year, you say, this is the year. This is my year. I'm going to finally do X. Not talk Lashon Hara, volunteer chesed, give tzedakah, make it to shul on time, have fun in davening, be more patient with my children. This is the year. And then soon after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, it's like any other year. It's not the year. So Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if every Yom Naram you're doing the same thing over and over again, which is saying the Machzor, clapping the Alchit and Yom Kippur, but we're just doing the same thing over and over again, we're insane if we think we can get a different result. So it's time to mix things up, to do things a little bit differently, try to change the habits of our life, to break the habits in our life, to take on realistic, small, bite-sized Kabbalahs. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bench from a bencher. Here's what I'm going to do. Every time I feel Hashem in my life, I'm going to put it in a WhatsApp group. I'm going to record it. I'm going to share it with someone close to me. I'm going to work on identifying and feeling Hashem in my life. Whatever small Kabbalah, whatever small thing we accept upon ourselves. If you say, I'm going to run 20 miles every single day and you've never run 3 steps, then you set yourself up for failure. But if you decide that, I'm not, you decide it's not that I'm going to run a marathon on day 1, I'm just going to take a few steps. And then I'm going to jog, and then I'm going to run. So I think doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different result is insanity. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how am I going to mix it up this year? How do I set realistic expectations and goals? And, the Piazetz Rebbe writes, They look at PSF and Hashem Yikom Demo. He writes, he says, most people, what they call goals are really wishes. Listen to this thought, Nachi. He says, most people, what they call goals are really wishes. I wish I wake up tomorrow and I'm 20 pounds lighter. I wish I wake up tomorrow and I'm more patient. I wish I wake up tomorrow and I'm a millionaire. I wish I wake up tomorrow and fill in the blank. We claim it's a goal, but really it's just a wish. Really, we wish we could close our eyes and wake up and be that thing we want. He says, what's the difference between a goal and a wish is whether there's a resolution. A resolution means here's how I'm going to do it. Here are the metrics to measure my success. Here are the accountability people in my life, a spouse, a friend, children, my rabbi, my rebbe. Who are the accountability partners who I'm going to state my goal? I'm going to make a resolution. I'm going to have an action item plan. I'm going to have a timeline. I'm going to have metrics to measure whether I'm succeeded or not. Peter Drucker, who's a management guru, says, what gets measured gets managed. So what happens? We decide in Elul and for Rosh Hashana, I'm changing everything. These big, bombastic, major statements of change. And then we don't measure whether we've changed anything. What gets measured gets managed. If we don't measure it, we can't manage it. We don't know if we're growing in it. So don't do the same thing every year. Don't do the same thing over and over again. Make a commitment, take a Kabbalah. Don't just have a wish and a goal. Make a resolution with a plan how to achieve it.
Do you find that line, what gets measured gets managed, do you find that to be like ironclad?
I find it to be almost ironclad. Somebody who says I'm taking 10,000 steps a day and wears the Fitbit or whatever, Apple Watch or whatever they're wearing, if they measure it, they're going to see how many. I went through this phase. It didn't last very long. You look at it at the end of the night, you realize how many steps you're short. You start walking around your house in circles. You look like a total moron because you said, you know what? I got to hit my 10,000 steps, right? Who hasn't been there? So let's say you didn't wear that watch, that Fitbit, and you had no idea how many steps, but you just took upon yourself. I mean, how long would it last? 3 days that you're going to try to walk a lot, having no idea how much you've really walked. So what gets measured gets managed. I actually have a spreadsheet. I've talked about this in different contexts. This is the way I am. I'm like, when I talk about things, that's what will hold me accountable to make the changes. Some people around me wish I would share less, a little bit less. But I have a spreadsheet at the beginning of the summer. I made certain commitments at the beginning of the summer. I was going to turn the notifications on my phone off on email and WhatsApp. I would delete social media from my phone. And I made certain other commitments that I was going to try to work on over the summer. And I have a spreadsheet now for 60 days every day that I fill out. And I look at it. And the end of every week, there are averages. How much did I really sleep at night? Take sleep. We can't be healthy and we can't be our best selves if we're not getting enough sleep. So how many of us, all of us, know we need more sleep? And we have all kinds of procrastination reasons of why we don't sleep enough. But we make this promise, this pledge, this year, this is my year, 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever it is, you need enough sleep. I'm going to sleep. But we fool ourselves. We lie to ourselves. But if you keep track, if you measure how much sleep, and then you average that week how much you got, now you have something real to look at. Now you have something to talk to. The Rambam writes that's vidui. Vidui has to be out loud. If the confession were only in your heart, it doesn't count. When you say in your heart, I need to work on A, B, and C, you're not really confronting it. You're not facing it. But when you say it out loud and you bring it into the world, when you measure it by admitting it and confessing to it, now you're confronting it, and now you're much more likely to change it.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot there that people can take and really grow from. We're going to answer 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap it up because we got so many more for next week that we gotta, keep. There's so much to work on, and there's so many things that are mentioned. I watch a lot of Shirim, a lot of Kabbalahs are mentioned. What should I prioritize during the Yom Naram?
Everybody has different lives. Everybody has different things they need to work on. Everyone has different things that naturally come easily to them and other things that are much, much harder. So I don't think there's a good generic answer, but 3 dimensions we live in simultaneously. We are in a relationship. We are in a relationship with Hashem. We are in a relationship with other people, and we are in a relationship in Adam La'atzma with ourselves. Maharal and Pirkei Avos writes every time you see the number 3, right? 3 ways the world stands. 3 things remove you from the world. 3 this, 3 that. It's always those 3 things. Ben Adam La'atzmo, between a person and themselves, which is the most neglected dimension we live in. Ben Adam L'Chavero, interpersonal with others. Ben Adam L'Makom, between us and God. So maybe this time of year, everyone's different. Everyone has to figure out what works for them. But a Kabbalah take upon something in each of those 3 dimensions. What will I work on between me and God? What will I work on between me and man? What will I work on between me? So example, between me and myself is getting enough sleep, eating right, actually exercising. Time management. Between me and others is being more patient, gossiping less, being more generous. Between me and God is saying brachas, being mindful when I talk to him, when I daven to him outside the sitter. So I think if someone took something on in all 3 realms, that's a really great start.
Okay, beautiful. just gonna pick one more question from this list that people sent in. Here we go. Advice for relating to friends and relatives who are OTD and have anti-from attitudes.
Yeah, advice for related to friends and relatives who are off the derech of anti-from attitudes. My thing is love, 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 love. The people who are off the derech, and there are no simple answers. In many cases, it's not a philosophical argument that if you get into it, you're going to win. If you start debating God's existence, God's role in their life, don't you know you have to be from, don't you know you're going to burn, what's going to happen to you if you're not from, I don't know that anyone ever became from for those reasons. Shlomo Zalman and others said nobody ever started to keep Shabbos because a rock was thrown at their car. I'm talking about the rocks being thrown at cars. Nobody ever started to keep Shabbos. A rock went through their windshield. Like, you know what? I should taka keep Shabbos. So people don't come back on the derech because someone was judgmental or dismissive or critical of them or because somebody excluded them. I think they come back on because there's a space for them. There's warmth and there's love. That doesn't mean we accept every decision. Doesn't mean we have to love every behavior, every lifestyle. We can love people without loving their decisions and without loving their lifestyle. And to me, that's the key thing. When someone's off the derech, first of all, what is the derech? There are many drachim, there are many paths in life. Our goal is to try to steer people and to stay on the path ourselves. But I think the best way to bring people on is to show them love, shower them with love. This isn't me. What do I know? Again, many, many great rabbis, great Gedolei Yisrael told people who came to them, the answer is not to sit in shiva for them. The answer is not to push them out or exclude them. The answer is love them. Love them more. That's your job. Not hate them and not judge them. Love them more. Again, I think it's important to communicate. We can love people without loving. That's where it gets to be a fine line because we have
Right.
people who are not observant, who are making lifestyle choices that we don't love. And there are people who fear, well, if I love them, aren't they going to conclude that I also condone their lifestyle? The answer is no. People are understand, they're sophisticated, they're nuanced, they can compartmentalize, and they realize that you can love them without loving, well, just like people love us, but they don't love all of our choices and all of our lifestyle. And I think that's the goal, that's the message to communicate.
It's probably super important to separate people from their actions sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, like that was Bruria. It says Yitamu chataim and haaretz not chotim. Right? We daven that we get rid of the sin of the world, not the sinners of the world. We're not trying to destroy or obliterate the sinners. We're trying to remove the sins. So we can love people even while we don't love all of their actions and behaviors. That's what unfortunately, increasingly, even within the Orthodox community, I have people who come to me whose children or grandchildren are marrying out, are intermarrying. And there's that big question, do I go to their wedding, not go to the wedding? How do I relate? Do I acknowledge their spouse? Do I bring them in? And the message I always try to get across is to find that balance between loving them even more than ever, letting them feel more loved than ever, but also maintaining your principles that you don't have to love their actions. And people, I think, who feel that the love is genuine, can understand that we don't have to love one another's actions. I'll tell you the truth. You don't have to go to off the derech or marrying out. There are people who are living through a very hard time, divisive time right now. People who are vaccinated, unvaccinated, mask, no mask, different schools, different shuls, different decisions, different people. Sometimes it's hard to remember, that's not the whole person. My entire relationship doesn't have to be defined by their attitude to Corona or my attitude to Corona. We're allowed to have a relationship where that's one part of it. And please God, it'll be one that's gone, hopefully soon, Bekarov, quickly. And we can have important disagreements about it and principled disagreements about it. But it's only one part of the relationship we have. I can love you even if I don't love the choices you're making in this area.
I think that's just how I feel. I like throughout COVID, I feel like there's been so much division between pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, pro-mask, anti-mask, and it's gotten so out of hand. What you're suggesting is that doesn't really need to define your relationship with somebody. You don't need to, just like, obviously it's not the same. Someone likes the color blue and you hate the color blue. That can't just derail your relationship. Some would say, what do you mean? Someone doesn't wear a mask. They obviously don't care about other people's health. And if they don't care about other people's health, then I don't want to be friends with them.
Exactly.
I imagine that's the rationalization that people make.
That's exactly what's going on. First of all, there are people who say, I can never trust their judgment again. I learned so much about them over these 2 years of the pandemic. They're not who I thought they were. There were people who we thought were crazy. It turns out they're normal. The people we thought were normal, it turns out they're crazy. And there are people who are neither. They're just different than we are. And I have very strong feelings, believe me. And I don't think either of us want to talk about this right now. I have strong feelings on what's right and what we can do to put this whole thing in the rearview mirror. But I have to sometimes actively make that choice to remember I loved this person before Corona. Members of a family, members of a shul, I admire, I love them, I feel so connected to them. I'm not going to punish myself by not having a relationship because of this one aspect. Can I give? I don't know if it's a T4 or a flex. I'm still confused the difference between the two. But on our Behind the Bima with Mariano Rivera, the great New York Hall of Fame Yankee closer, he answered one of the questions was, when you play Boston, that rivalry, do you carry it off the field? He gave such a great answer to it. And he said, on the field, we fight with everything we've got. We want to destroy each other. We want to beat each other. We want to win. He goes, but do you know that after the game we go out for dinner? Or the game we go grab lunch? He said, I got great friends from the Boston Red Sox. Aside from the fact that he also spoke about it's just a game, but his point was you could have a rivalry on the things you disagree about, but you have to be able to put that down and put it aside and then go out for dinner and then have the friendship afterwards. And I think we've got to learn that in politics. One of the commentators writing that right now. We got to learn that in politics. We got to learn that in COVID policies. We got to learn that in hashkafa and frumkeit. These things matter. I'm not minimizing them. These differences are important. Right? And we could talk about another time because I know we're out of time tonight. What should you do when your loved one is intermarrying? Do you go to the wedding, not go to the wedding? That's maybe a good teaser question for another time. I'm not saying you go to the wedding. I'm not suggesting you go to the wedding. We could talk more about that. But I am suggesting that outside of the wedding, the whole relationship doesn't have to be summarized by that one component of the relationship.
Amazing. We got to so many great questions tonight, and I'm sure over the week, many people who joined us tonight are going to be watching this afterwards are going to be like, whoa, I have questions, because these are such good answers. So every Thursday night, everyone who's here, make sure to tune back in. We will, Mr. Shem, save this live. You'll be able to watch it on our IGTV. If you haven't watched the Behind the Bima episode from last night with Mariano Rivera, I highly suggest go ahead and check that out. It's a really great episode. It's a flex. It's a T4. It's all the above. You'll find out that Rabbi Efrem Goldberg is a huge Red Sox fan. In the first few minutes, you'll hear. Anyways, guys, go ahead and check that out. Thank you so much, Rabbi Goldberg. I'm very excited about this series. I hope there's many, many more of these to come.
Nachi, thank you for hosting me. It's a lot of fun. I love the off the cuff, and I hope people will, if people want to continue, I hope they'll ask whatever's on their mind. It could be in any area. I don't have all the answers, but I'm happy to share some thoughts and continue the conversation. So thank you so much for putting this together.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone have a great night and have a great Shabbos.
Take care.